Welcome to the Four Heroes podcast. My name is Bonnie Douglas, and I'm the Director of Operations for Four Heroes. Today's episode is a special one. For current partners and friends of Four Heroes, you might have already seen a bit of this amazing story in your email inbox. But we invited Chief Randy Mundy and his wife Devon to share their inspiring story of faith and healing. They love Jesus, their family, and their community, and we are so thankful for community leaders who model strength and hope in the face of adversity. The Mundys are a gift to Four Heroes and to the town and agency they serve, and we hope that you are encouraged as you hear how God has worked in their lives.
Welcome to the Four Heroes podcast. My name is Frank Mercer, and we're so happy to have you listening. I am at Tyrone PD today with my friend, Chief Randy Mundy. Chief Mundy exemplifies what it is to be a law enforcement officer who follows Jesus with his whole heart, a law enforcement officer who's intent on showing the world what it looks like when Jesus carries a badge and a gun. I'm so proud to call him my friend. He has worked here in Tyrone as chief for several years. Prior to that, he was in Griffin, Fairburn, Palmetto, all here locally, and has served in law enforcement for almost 34 years. We're blessed to have him in Tyrone. He is married to his beautiful wife, Devon, who is also with us this morning. We're excited to have the two of you here. They've been married for nearly 20 years. Together have two beautiful daughters, Caitlin, who's 17, and Abby, who's 14. Chief Mundy also has three sons, Justin, who's one of our firefighters here in the county, and Caleb and Mark. Devon, we're so glad to have you with us today. Can't wait to talk a little bit about your life experience and the journey that God has had you on, some of the ups and downs. I'm just really honored to have you both. The one thing that makes you so impactful in this world and in this town, I really believe, is that you love Jesus. You both do, and your faith is what drives everything else. It changes how you respond to what life throws your way. Also this morning, Bonnie Douglas, our Director of Operations, is here. Bonnie, so good to have you sitting here at the table with us.
Good to be here. Yeah, I am excited about this. I love sharing people's stories. So I'm excited that all of you were on board with doing that. It takes a lot to open up, especially on a public platform. You know, podcast is a public platform, and be vulnerable about what you've experienced. So thank you so much for being willing to be a part of this. We think your story is definitely worth telling. Something miraculous happened on February 14th, and we got to celebrate it in the parking lot of Dogwood Church on the very next day. I remember when I got a text from Frank letting me know what God had done in your lives, and it was mind-blowing. Even though I'd been praying for you and your family, and I had been asking others to pray for you, I was blown away at how God showed up that day. Honestly, it was a moment that built my faith personally and reminded me of how good and powerful God is. So I can't imagine how meaningful it was for you. For anyone who's listening who doesn't know, I'm sure they're on the edge of their seat wondering what happened on that day. But before we get into the details of exactly what happened, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your background. Did you grow up in a Christian home?
I did. I grew up Catholic, made my communion, confirmation. My grandmother, my nanny, she used to teach me how to pray the rosary. My grandfather would sit and read the Bible to us, and I always knew that God was there. I prayed all through my life growing up, but it took a little longer for me to realize just how much God was willing to be there and show up and help.
Understood. You know, I love to hear couples' stories of how they met, just the romantic in me. And I've heard you both tell this story, and Devon, you tell it better. You guys were in college together, right?
Yes.
You were sitting in a psychology class?
We were sitting in psychology class, and I was very shy and very quiet, and Randy is not either one of those.
No, he is not.
So I was sitting there with my legs crossed in my chair, and all of a sudden this police officer kicks my shoe and sends it flying to the front of the classroom. And I just turned bright red, and I was like, oh my gosh. So then I, of course, had to hobble up and get my shoe because we were in the back all the way up to the front, bright red the whole time. Get my shoe, come sit back down, and I looked at him like, I can't believe this. And he just thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Well, there's some backdrop to that. There was a reason I was sitting next to her. And it was actually because she was the quietest in the room and I was the loudest. And the teacher, who ended up being a good friend of ours, thought it good to set me next to her because maybe then I would shut up because I'd have no one to talk to. That worked for about 5 minutes.
You were in the wrong class.
Right. After that happened, I got a call from the school counselor and they said, you're not supposed to be in psychology class. That's not a class required for your major, so we're going to switch you to another class. And I actually prayed because I thought, hey, Randy is pretty interesting and I'd like to maybe get to know him and see how else he can embarrass me. So I said a little prayer, I'd like to stay in this class. And, it was something small, but even the small stuff, God comes through. And I was able to stay in the class and get credit for it. And that's where our story began.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like a God story to me. So your relationship progressed and you got married.
Right.
What's it like to be married to a law enforcement officer?
So now that he is the chief, it's much different to me than when it was in the beginning because patrolmen, they're out on the road more. Their shifts can be different. They work, holidays. They're not able to be there. Also comes along, the worry of that. They show up for the bad stuff. I mean, that's what police usually get called for. I always pray when he goes out the door that he'll come home safe, that he can come back to us and, not encounter the dangers of the world. So there's worry. There's excitement too because the police department really has a family element to it. People talk about that and I don't realize if they know how much, you become friends with people here and their families, and it's just like an extended big family.
These days, she just worries I'm going to fall asleep driving to work at my age.
Yeah.
And there's challenges besides just being married to a law enforcement officer. Also, just being married to anybody is a challenge. Yeah. And raising kids together and just all the highs and lows and twists and turns with that. Yeah. So you got 2 teenage girls at home.
Right.
Enough said.
Yeah. For sure.
You've been blessed. You've been really blessed, and those 3 boys too. God's blessed you with a great family. But yeah, all of it is a challenge, and I think that's one of the things that people are not always dialed into because they see you in a role where you're coming to the rescue. They see you as a hero and sometimes don't see you as a human being who has his own challenges, has his own hurts, who breaks and bleeds. And that's a tough role, being a human who's also a hero. How do you manage that?
I think the public, at least from my perspective, it's easy for them to identify the differences, right? I'm in a police car, I'm in a uniform, and they're not. I'm the guy that writes the ticket, and sometimes they're the ones that get it. But I think they fail to see how remarkably similar we actually are. Right. To manage it, honestly, I go out there and I try to treat people the way I would want to be treated. I grew up in an area where the police were not super popular in Gary, Indiana. So I've seen both sides of it. You just have to go out there with the attitude that we are servants, because that's what we are. Yeah. We're servants. It takes a special person to be a police officer, to be in public safety, dispatch, firefighters, EMS. Takes a special person to do that. You're not in it to become a millionaire. If you are, you made a bad career choice, but you're out there because you actually are in a position to make a difference in someone else's life. Of all the things I've done, and I know you and Bonnie know a lot of some of my different antics through my life. Anyways, I don't know why everybody laughs when I say that. Actually, I do know. But of all the things that you could do in life and make a difference, I mean, actually make a difference in someone's, and isn't that really what's going to matter when it's all over with? As cheesy as that may sound, it's true.
I love cheese. And I love that. Bonnie, one of the first times Chief and I had a real conversation, we'd met, but I was coming out from the coffee shop up the road in my car, and he was walking down the sidewalk, and I rolled the window down and said, "Chief, do you need a ride?" I thought maybe his patrol car had broken down or something. And he said, "No, I'm just walking." He was brand new, and he was walking all over the town of Tyrone, meeting business owners and people on the street and just introducing himself. And it was like, man, that's like the way Andy Taylor is the sheriff in Mayberry.
So good.
I love it. And, Tyrone, I always think of Tyrone as like 98% Mayberry, 2% Gotham City, but still 98% Mayberry. And you're just the right man at the right time for this job.
So, Devon, when you were 38, you were diagnosed with breast cancer. What do you remember about receiving that diagnosis? Like, what was that like as a wife, mother, follower of Christ to receive that kind of news?
It was, first reaction was completely like, no way this is possible. I had found a lump in my chest and just thought it was nothing, maybe a cyst, maybe a bug bite. I mean, didn't think anything of it. And then when I went and got the mammogram and then the ultrasound, and they came right back to me, they said, "Okay, the doctor's going to come talk to you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he came in and he said, "If you were my wife or my sister, I would tell you, go get a biopsy right now." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And my sister was with me, and I just remember walking out of there in complete shock. I went down to the cancer center and had the biopsy done. It came back and they said, "You have stage 2A cancer. We think it has spread to your lymph nodes. So you are going to have chemo, radiation, surgery." And I remember thinking, I do not want to have chemo. You think of chemo and you just think of someone bald, so sick, they look like they're dying. And I was like, I think I can do anything, but I don't think I can do chemo. And I was honestly ready to give up. I was like, not doing chemo. We'll see what happens. Because when you get the cancer diagnosis, you feel fine. You just have this little bump and you're like, how is this little tiny, it was the size of a pinky nail, about to rock my world and change everything. And I remember when I was praying, I kept praying and kept praying and kept praying. And I felt like my prayers were hitting the ceiling. And I was like, why is it not getting through? And when I finished praying, the message that I felt in my heart was, God was saying, "You're going to have to walk this path, but I'm going to be there with you." After I got the diagnosis, they do like an MRI where they have to see how far it's spread. That's even before the PET scan. And when you're in the MRI, they ask you if you want to listen to music. And I said, yes, I'd like to listen to some Christian music. And the song that came on that really stuck with me and spoke to me was 10,000 Reasons. Those words just were so loud to me. Still to this day, like when I hear that song, it just speaks volumes to me.
It's a song about gratitude.
Right.
And you're laying there in the MRI listening to a song about gratitude, and that's what moved you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I went through that battle. I did the chemo. It was hard. There was many times that I was back down at the cancer center because my potassium was very low. And those infusions to get potassium, they take like hours, like 8 hours that you just sit there. The family helped me so much, because the girls were little. They were 6th grade and 3rd grade. Everybody really showed up, which was a blessing of its own, because I really have always felt, and there's not a reason for it because I know my family loves me and stuff. I've just felt like I just didn't deserve to be loved. So when people show up and are doing all these things for you, you're like, oh, okay. And when God shows up, and after you've gone through this chemo and you've gone through radiation and surgery, and they say, you have had a complete response. There is no evidence of disease. Because they never say you're cured. They just say no evidence of disease.
Wow. Of course, once they said that, you felt like it was all behind you.
Right.
Yeah, and then it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, 2020 came.
Yep, 2020 came. So I was about 7 or 8 months out of my last chemo treatment.
Yeah.
And we come to March of 2020. I got COVID. I didn't know I had COVID. I went down to the cancer center because I was really sick, and I thought it was just like a bad cold or something. My niece Angie, because she worked there, of course, she came and sat in the room with me, and they were like, "You're sick. We're going to admit you. We've done, some blood tests and stuff, and you are septic. And so we're going to have to keep you at least 3 days. You have pneumonia, but we have to figure out what's causing the pneumonia." And then all of a sudden we hear tape going across the door. And both of us look at each other, and I was like, open the door, go see what it says, because I was hooked up to an IV and they were giving me IV antibiotics and all this stuff. And she opened the door and it said caution and biohazard, this big red sign. And we were like,
Terrifying.
Oh, okay. Then the doctor comes in and he says, we're sending you home. I was like, you just told me you're admitting me. What do you mean you're sending me home? Well, we've done all these tests, and they do like a respiratory panel, and it has every respiratory disease you could think of, but not COVID. So all the respiratory diseases I tested negative for. He shook my hand and he said, I don't think you have COVID. I'm going to shake your hand. He said, but we just can't figure out what you have. And because it's a hospital full of cancer patients, we have to send you home because we can't risk anyone else getting sick. And I was scared to death. I was like, septic people go home. You die. You don't get better at home when you're septic. One of the doctors down there came in and he said, can I pray with you? And I said, yes, please. And he prayed with me. And I said, why are you sending me home to die? And he said, we are sending you home because you are safer at home. You don't want to be in the hospital. And of course, now in March of 2020, none of us would understand that.
Right.
Of course, after that, you saw people were going into the hospital with COVID and not coming out. They were going on ventilators and they were dying. So that in itself was a blessing of being sent home.
Sure.
I battled COVID for about 2 months. It did some damage to my lungs. The cancer center would do scans and follow up. They did a biopsy. Biopsy came back benign. With each step, there was bigger, deeper prayers. Please let this come back negative. Don't let this spread. Let everything be okay. Take care of the girls. Take care of Randy. I really want to see them. I want to be with them. Please let me be okay. So after that, I just did like the yearly checkups, kind of once a year. They do the mammogram and everything. And then I started having some bad pain in my back. And I went back down to the cancer center and they did x-rays and CT. They said, we don't see anything. So, since you're having it, we're just going to do a nerve block and we'll kind of send you on your way. I said, okay. They said, well, we could do an MRI. Do you want to do that or you want us just to go ahead? And I said, well, let's just do it just in case.
Yeah.
The MRI results came back, and of course the results always come in when it's about 5:15 or dinner time, so there's nobody to talk to. On February 7th, my MRI came back and it said multifocal osseous metastatic disease. It was scattered throughout my pelvis. Osteometastatic disease of the L4 vertebrae measuring 14 millimeters. It meant that I had stage 4 cancer that had spread from my lungs to my pelvis, to my spine, and to my rib cage. I don't like to say those words. I don't like to read them. I couldn't catch my breath. I was paralyzed with fear. And all I could think was, please, God, don't take me from my family.
Right.
Yeah.
I told Randy, I said, just take me to my dad's. And the girls were riding bikes or something in the front yard. And they were like, what are you guys doing? And I said, I just need to go talk to Pop. My dad said, I'm going to tell you just like I told you back when you were diagnosed the first time. He said, if it means that we have to cut off an arm, cut off a leg, whatever it means, we're going to fight. And I said, okay. Of course, I didn't feel that way. I was like, there's no fighting.
Right.
You don't fight
Right.
when this happens. I mean, that's just, it's too far.
I mean, it's devastating news. So good that you were able to go to your dad and that he was that supportive of you. We're going to fight.
Yes.
Because I'm sure you did feel like giving up.
Oh, yeah. Well, not even just giving up. It was kind of like, almost like you received a death sentence. That night when I went home, I told the kids that my cancer was back. I didn't tell them, the worst of the worst. I just said, I've had these tests done. My cancer's back. They both broke down, of course. We all went in my oldest daughter's room and kind of had like a big camp out sleepover. I wasn't sleeping. And that night, the only thing that I could say was, please, God. I couldn't find any more words the whole night. Like, I didn't sleep at all. I must have said it 100,000 times, just please God, please God. And I know that he knew what I was please God, but I just couldn't get the words out.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. I remember you reaching out to me and telling me what was going on with Devon. And I came over to the house and prayed with you guys and just sat and listened for a while. Dave was there. The girls were there. There was just this almost hopelessness. I mean, it wasn't hopeless, but it was as close to hopeless as we get, as believers. It's that, I believe Jesus, but help me in my unbelief kind of a moment where life is throwing its very worst at you. And that was February 7th when you got the news.
Right.
And then things took a turn.
You had a biopsy on February 12th, and we mentioned that a miracle happened on February 14th.
Right.
But we hadn't shared exactly what that was. So can you walk us through that experience? What happened that day on February 14th? It was Ash Wednesday. It was Valentine's Day.
So on February 14th, Ash Wednesday, Valentine's Day, we got the results of the biopsy. The biopsy and God said, no cancer. I will let Randy go from there because I think the news even hit him harder than it hit me.
Having gone through the first fight and watching Devon fight, like unbelievably fight, total resolve once we started fighting, wasn't taking no for an answer. The faith was there. The outpouring of support was enormous. The difference this time is what rocked me because I didn't see that fight. And she says I was in total denial, which maybe I was, but I seen what God did the first time.
Right.
She didn't have that fight, and she had actually gotten to the point to where she said, look, we need to talk. And I was like, what? And she says, I'm keeping a journal. There are a lot of things that I do for these girls that you really don't know nothing about. She said, you're great taking them to the gym. You're great at volleyball. You're great at all those dad things.
Yeah.
But I need to tell you what you're going to have to do when I'm gone. And that just busted me. I mean, I said, no. So I prayed harder than probably I've ever prayed. And I've prayed pretty hard at times. But I just kept saying, Devon, please, can't we just wait? And she said, what are we waiting for? I said, let's wait till we get the results. So then the 14th comes, and I heard the call because the results had come through this little portal and looked kind of optimistic, but it was like, what is this? Devon always finds a way into a portal, even when they don't think she can. I'm just going to let you know. You can lock it I don't know if she has her passwords. I don't know how she does it. But she says, Randy, look at this. Then a phone call was made, and it was on speaker, and I just sat there and listened. When the doctor, in their terms, said, hey, look, that ain't cancer, I don't even remember hitting my knees. I just don't. Gravity just yanked me straight down to my knees.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
it was emotional.
Yeah.
And I was grateful and so thankful. We have conversations. Everybody does. If you're married, well, I hope I go before you do. And no. Well, if you go before I do, and or whatever, But have you ever really imagined that, what it's really like? Well, when you get something like that glaring at you, you actually have time to pause and think, well, what would life be like? And it was not something I wanted to do. Yeah. It was not. And I promise you, I would have given it 100%. I mean, I would have been there. I would have done everything I could. But I'm not capable of doing it as good as she does. There's just some things that she is just so good at.
Yeah. I
would like to add to my previous answer when you asked me what service looks like. Location, location, location. There is no place I should have been besides Tyrone, Georgia, when that happened. My town manager came to me. My mayor and council people came to me. I had a mayor pray for me in his office. Wow. Called me over there to pray for me in his office. I had another council person pray for me in public in Circa Coffee House.
And me.
And Devon. Devon was there. Oh, yeah.
He came and said, can I pray with you?
Where else does God have that many people in one little municipality?
One of your officers, was it Eric, got a cross. Someone we didn't even know delivered a cross to Eric and said, please tell the chief, give this to the chief and tell him that I'm praying for his wife. Mm-hmm. It was really amazing that so many people were praying. I can't even imagine the number of people, hundreds. It could be 1,000. I mean, are praying and reaching out on Facebook and texting Randy. And I was blown away by the support and the prayers and the messages and everything.
My phone stays busy anyways, but I've never received so many text messages. And it was on a daily basis. Some people I know very well, like you guys. Other people I just kind of know. But they were all texting. Yeah. And I mean, you talk about city council people, literally praying for you. I mean, during meetings. I mean, this is a special place. This is special. And I knew that when I came here. Yeah. I can remember telling Brandon, I said, this is where I need to finish my career. It's been a blessing, and I love these people here. I do. I love these officers, the people that work at Town Hall. They're like extended family to me at this point. And, of course, I got to meet you.
Yes, sir.
I got to meet you, and look what we've done, right?
That's right.
So through another unfortunate set of circumstances, you had the idea, hey, let's have a weekly meeting. And you called it Huddle, and started off with me and you and maybe two other police officers, and the next thing you know, there's groups of 20 or 25 at the Circuit Coffee House on Mondays. Most of them civilians tuned in to the Word of God.
That's right. Yeah.
When we did receive the news of the diagnosis, Randy told me and the girls, he said, I would like us to go get baptized as a family.
That's right. So, the conversation about baptism was already going. Baptism is always a profession of faith for a believer, a way to profess, I believe Jesus died for my sin, was buried, rose from the dead. You're identifying with that. And you had never been baptized by immersion. You were baptized as an infant. The girls were baptized super young. Yeah. And then there were others. It became a pool party. Right. Every one of them really for two reasons: to profess their faith in Jesus, but also to rally around you and, in a sense, say, Jesus is our hope. when we got the news on the 14th and had already scheduled the baptism for the 15th, it really did make it a big pool party.
Yeah.
For folks listening, Dogwood Church has a beautiful baptistry out really in their parking lot. And this is February 15th, but it's Georgia. And temperatures, it was a beautiful day, blue sky, and I think the temperature was around 60 degrees, and the water is heated. It's like a big jacuzzi. And I pulled into the parking lot, and you guys got there, and then another car got there, and another car got there, and cars just kept on coming. And some of it was people to celebrate by observing, and some of it was folks who were going to be baptized. I think we baptized 9 that day.
9 or 10.
I baptized you, Chief, and then they just queued up, and we together baptized the remainder, with you doing the dunking and me doing the talking. We baptized Devon, we baptized Caitlin, we baptized Abby, we baptized your son Justin and his fiancee Kayla. Kayla serves Tyrone PD as well as an officer. And Justin's our firefighter. They're about to get married. Yeah. Yeah. And then help me with some of the other names.
So my nephew Daniel.
Yeah.
And then his nephew, little Daniel. Then we had my buddy from high school, Brian Bright.
Yeah.
And we had another one scheduled that couldn't make it. He reminds me often that we have another round of baptisms.
Another baptism on the calendar. Yeah. That was, that was beautiful. And there was so much joy. When you celebrate baptism, you're celebrating new life. Buried to your old way of life, raised to walk in new life. And so you're celebrating new life, but there was something almost tangible about that celebration of new life, because you know that you're celebrating, man, I'm going to have eternal life, abundant life, life with Jesus. But we were also celebrating this cancer does not exist. What a party. What a day to sing 10,000 Reasons.
Right.
I know how we felt in the parking lot. We prayed together before. I think we prayed after. We took lots of pictures. What was it like driving home from that baptism?
It was like, no matter how bad things get, and things get bad for a lot of people, but I was for 7 days planning to die, to leave my family, and talking about it, writing about it, trying to make arrangements for the kids. And then God shows up in just a huge way and says, no, you're not going to die. You don't have cancer. The greatest love that you could ever know came down on someone like me.
Mm-hmm. We believe that Jesus came for the last, the lost, and the least, and I've been all of those things. He came for me, came for you. What an amazing story. Yeah. I love it. Chief, you got any final thoughts on it all?
Yeah, a couple. The ride home, to answer your question, was full of excitement, relief, a lot of questions from the kids, which was cool, because I love it when they ask questions about the Bible. You know, Jesus never told us life was going to be easy.
That's right.
And that's why I don't really prescribe to the prosperity gospel the way some folks do.
Yeah.
Not judging, just I don't.
Right.
And Jesus said in this world you would have tribulation. But what did he say next?
Oh, I've overcome this world.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So imagine what life would be like if we never got rocked. If we never had any adversities. We'd be like jellyfish. But each one of these incidents has made Devon stronger, grown in faith. And I can't help but think that from God's perspective, the ultimate end is Devon in glory in the kingdom.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And if she has to go through these trials and tribulations, and who knows what's next?
Right.
None of us know, right?
Right.
But knowing that he's with us and the ultimate end is the kingdom of God makes that so much more manageable to me. You know, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Right.
You know, who knows? Jobs come and go, health fails, beauty fades. I mean, look at Frank.
Yeah, long ago. Long ago.
Obviously, just kidding. I can only say that because he's my friend now. But the constant is Christ.
Right.
You know, Paul said that he was content in all these circumstances, right?
Amen.
When you get into that mindset and you say, you know, I'm a servant of God. We talked about being a servant of the people earlier. We're servants of God. And then you let him direct those paths. And you just know he's there with you. And whatever the outcome. And sometimes the outcome, someone leaves. You know, I've lost a lot of my people in my family. In fact, I lost a lot of them back to back. You know, but they're not lost because I know where they are.
Right.
You know, so we get through this journey, get to the end of this race, then we're home.
Amen.
Then we're home.
Yeah.
Right?
Well
Ain't
said.
that right, Devon?
That's right.
Finally, she agrees with me about something. 20 years.
20 years. I was thinking about C.S. Lewis. He's my favorite non-biblical writer. And, you know, near the end of his life, he married for the first time, a woman. She was an American writer named Joy. They were married only for a short while, and she got cancer, and she died. C.S. Lewis wrote a book called A Grief Observed that was really almost like a diary of his pain. But one of the things that C.S. Lewis says is that God whispers to us in our pleasure, but he shouts to us in our pain. God's done some shouting here, shouting that he loves you, that he's got you no matter what. Nobody's ever going to take you away from him. Nothing is ever going to take you away from him. And that's beautiful. And wants to use your own story, your own pain, to continue to broadcast that, to shout that to others. Like I said, I feel like there are a lot of folks who look at a family like yours and not fully understand the humanity of the Mundy family. But you guys have been through it all, the ups and downs and the twists and turns and all the pain and hopelessness, to discover that you have a living hope in Jesus. And that's beautiful. And I think that's all I got to say about that.
Thank you for listening to the Four Heroes podcast. It takes a tremendous amount of courage for public safety leaders to open up and talk about personal challenges. So we are grateful for the Mundys, for their kindness and their willingness to share. If you, or someone you know, would like to receive Four Heroes email updates and read more stories like this, you can text subscribe to 844-919-7468. Thanks for joining us, and remember, even heroes need a helping hand.